California just made the biggest bet in its climate history. In September 2025, Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 1207 and SB 840, extending the state's cap-and-trade program through 2045 and giving it a new name, Cap and Invest. This isn't just a cosmetic rebrand, though. It's a signal that California is doubling down on carbon pricing as the cornerstone of its climate strategy, building on AB 398 from 2017, even as the Trump administration declares war on state climate policies. What's actually happening at your gas pump right now? California's cap-and-trade program adds about 23 cents to every gallon of gasoline you buy. That might not sound like much, but when combined with the state's other fuel regulations like the low-carbon fuel standard and taxes, the total regulatory burden reaches $1.25 per gallon. That's 27% of what you're paying at the pump. But California's prices didn't just get expensive overnight because of local taxes and regulations. In late February 2026, the United States and Israel launched a series of airstrikes on Iran, an operation the military dubbed Operation Epic Fury. The economic fallout was almost immediate, and analysts described it as the world's largest supply disruption since the 1970s energy crisis. Here's why that matters for your gas tank. When the war began, all shipping through the Strait of Hormuz was effectively halted, removing roughly 1/5 of the world's entire oil and gas supply from the market in one shot. Crude oil had been sitting around $67 a barrel before the war started. Within days, it was approaching $97 and briefly crossed $100 a barrel. At the pump, that translated to gas prices soaring more than 30% nationwide in just over a month, pushing the national average past $4 a gallon for the first time since 2022. So, if the whole country is getting squeezed, why is California being absolutely crushed? Because California was already standing on the edge of a cliff before any of this happened, and the Iran war gave it a hard shove. Energy economist Philip Verliger warned that the U.S. West Coast would become, in his words, the poster child for the consequences of the attacks on Iran. California's state mandate for a special reformulated gasoline blend means it can't just pull fuel from anywhere. It has a limited number of refineries approved to produce its specific fuel mix, and most of those refineries sit right on the West Coast, with no major pipeline connecting them to the rest of the country. By late March, the pain was visible at every gas station sign. A Shell station in San Francisco was already showing regular fuel at $6.50 per gallon as of March 12th. Prices only kept climbing from there, with GasBuddy recording California's statewide average at nearly $5.87 by March 31st. The Trump administration did take one step to help, waiving the Jones Act, which normally requires American ships to move goods between U.S. ports, allowing foreign vessels to bring fuel directly to the West Coast and the Northeast. But even that emergency measure couldn't fully offset the damage. The rest of the country is paying the Iran war tax. California is paying it with interest. The cap-and-trade program generates massive revenue, though. Since its launch, cap-and-trade auctions have generated approximately $28 billion. That's roughly $7 to $8 billion per year flowing into California's coffers. About $2 to $3 billion of that comes back to you as the California climate credit on your electricity bill, while $4 to $5 billion goes into the state's greenhouse gas reduction fund. The November 2025 auction alone brought in $844 million. The February 2026 auction generated $919 million, with all allowances selling at the price floor of $27.94. When auctions sell out at the floor price, it tells us something important. There's plenty of room to tighten the emissions cap without driving prices through the roof. Now here's where things get really interesting. California isn't going it alone anymore. By 2027, the state plans to link its carbon market with Washington State and Quebec, creating a massive three-jurisdiction trading system under CARB Chair Leon Randolph's oversight. This isn't just about expanding the market, it's about creating a North American carbon pricing bloc that could rival the European Union's emissions trading system and potentially challenge RGGI, the northeastern U.S. carbon market. Washington's carbon allowances currently sell for around $60 per ton, while California hovers near $30. When these markets link, we'll see price convergence somewhere between those 2 points. Washington needs deeper emissions cuts, though, 45% below 1990 levels by 2030 compared to California's 40% target. Quebec aims for 37.5% reductions. But California faces a sobering reality check. Despite all the money and policy machinery, the state is running 7 years behind its 2030 climate target. In 2022, emissions dropped to 371.1 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent, the lowest in decades, and a 24% reduction since 2000. Sounds impressive, right? But California still needs to cut another 111 million tons annually to hit its 2030 goal. That means doubling the current pace of emissions reductions. The state needs to cut roughly 15 million tons every year between now and 2030. As Noel Perry, founder of the research organization Next 10, put it bluntly, California won't meet our 2030 climate goal until 2047 at the current trajectory. This is where the new Cap and Invest program gets aggressive. The legislation includes a provision called offsets under the cap. Previously, when companies used carbon offsets to meet their obligations, it didn't reduce the total number of allowances available. Now every offset used removes an allowance from the following year's budget. This tightens the overall emissions cap automatically. The program also changed offset limits from 4% to 6% of compliance obligations, but no more than half can come from projects outside California. It's a balancing act between flexibility and ensuring real in-state emissions reductions. About 450 businesses must comply with the program. Large power plants, industrial facilities, and fuel distributors responsible for about 85% of California's total greenhouse gas emissions. These aren't small players. We're talking about refineries, cement plants, steel mills, and the companies that distribute gasoline and natural gas throughout the state. The political drama surrounding this program is intense. In April 2025, President Trump issued an executive order titled Protecting American Energy from State Overreach, specifically targeting California's cap-and-trade program. Trump declared that state climate policies are fundamentally irreconcilable with his administration's energy agenda. Governor Newsom fired back, calling Trump's order a glorified press release, masquerading as an executive order. But this isn't just political theater. The Trump administration is exploring legal challenges to California's program, though they face an uphill battle. The previous Trump administration sued California over cap-and-trade in 2019 and lost decisively. The federal court ruled that the administration failed to prove that cap-and-trade undermines federal foreign policy authority. Because the Biden administration dropped the appeal, the legal doctrine of res judicata now prevents relitigating the same claims. Trump's team would need entirely new legal arguments to challenge the program. The program prioritizes environmental justice communities. State law requires that at least 35% of climate investments benefit disadvantaged and low-income areas. In practice, 73% of project funding, over $9.02 billion, has gone to priority populations, far exceeding the legal requirement. But critics argue the program is regressive. Assembly Minority Leader James Gallagher claims cap-and-trade has made every part of life more expensive, disproportionately burdening lower-income workers who spend more of their income on fuel. Supporters counter that carbon pricing creates market signals that drive innovation and investment in clean energy. When businesses and consumers see the true climate cost of fossil fuels, they make different choices. Electric vehicle adoption in California bears this out. The state hit its target of 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles 2 years ahead of schedule, helped by complementary policies like the Renewables Portfolio Standard. Looking ahead to 2030, several critical changes are coming. Free allowances for major industrial polluters continue at 100% until 2030, then the Air Resources Board can adjust allocations based on leakage risk and climate goals. The board must update all offset protocols by 2029 to reflect the best available science. The program's extension through 2045 could generate between $70 billion and $260 billion in total allowance value, depending on carbon prices. That's transformational money for clean energy infrastructure, public transit, affordable housing, and community resilience projects. Success isn't guaranteed, though. Carbon prices could spike if the cap tightens too quickly, potentially triggering political backlash. Federal interference could disrupt interstate cooperation. Economic recession could reduce emissions naturally, making the cap less binding. But California has already proven that carbon pricing works at scale. Emissions are down 24% since 2000, while the economy grew 78%. The state met its 2020 climate target 6 years early. The infrastructure is in place. The legal framework is solid, and billions in revenue demonstrate market confidence. As we approach 2030, California's Cap and Invest program represents more than climate policy. It's a test of whether market-based solutions can drive the rapid decarbonization that science demands. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the clock is ticking.